Welcome to our channel, Main Event Global, and our first ever episode of The Weigh-In. Today we're going to be talking about the upcoming rematch between Andy Ruiz Jr. and Anthony Joshua. This fight is going to be one of the most hyped of the year after the surprise victory of Andy Ruiz Jr. in New York. Today we're going to be chatting through what we think is going to happen, the betting odds at the moment, and where we see value in those odds. We'll be giving you the outcome we think is going to happen and look at the fighter's preparation to the upcoming fight. This episode is brought to you by myself, Michael, and Matthew from Main Event Global. And the first things first, how do you think, Matthew, that these fighters are approaching the fight?
Well, hi, guys. It's certainly exciting. I think that certainly Andy Ruiz has lost a fair bit of weight compared to last time. Whether that means he's taking this fight more seriously, I don't know, because obviously we've all seen the Instagram photos of him cruising around in Rolls Royces, seemingly eating whatever he likes. But perhaps he's thinking about the heat in Saudi Arabia. Perhaps he's thinking about going the distance. But I definitely think we're going to see a more slimmed down version of him. And there's been a lot of rumors as well about AJ slimming down. But in the last video of him on The Gloves Are Off, he was looking pretty big to me. So I have a feeling he's going to come in bigger than he was last time in America.
Yeah, because that was one point. In America, he was looking a lot slimmer than he usually does, wouldn't you say? The last,
yeah, I think he
was contributed to his loss.
Yeah, I would say definitely. He was noticeably smaller at the weigh-in. Why that was, I'm not really sure. Obviously, it was his first fight outside of the UK. Whether he changed his diet in some way, there were a lot of rumours. Obviously, there was a lot going on there with strict drug testing with all the fighters. What happened with Big Baby Miller, who was supposed to be his first opponent. But whatever it was, he certainly didn't look his usual sort of muscular self. But, of course, in comparison to Ruiz, he still looked quite a specimen. But as we all know, that didn't work out for him on the night.
Yeah. And also there were the rumours that he got knocked out in training beforehand and even had a panic attack. Now, I don't know whether those are true or not, but he certainly didn't look his usual self. That said, his previous fights before that weren't 100% convincing. So...
no, not at all. And I mean,
maybe that belied the fact that he actually he lost to someone who lost to Parker.
Yeah, well, that's true. I mean, in terms of what happened before the fight, as you say, there were all those rumors which himself and Eddie Hearn and things have been pretty quick to dismiss. So I don't know what's true. I mean, the one thing that was sort of most telling to me was straight after the loss, AJ's father jumped in the ring and was pretty much had to be held back from going for Eddie Hearn, shouting at him. So very clearly something was up, something had happened, because otherwise there's no other reasonable explanation for that reaction. So no doubt something did happen before the fight, where, maybe it was sort of ill-advised.
Because he said something about, from memory, like, told you he's the wrong opponent or something like that. So it shows that maybe they're not 100% confident against Ruiz.
There's no doubt that with Ruiz's style, which is sort of in your face and throwing a lot of punches, does not suit what AJ would preference to fight. I mean, as you said, of the people that AJ fought before, the ones that were sort of shorter and stocky, even Dillian White fight, gave him a lot of problems, had him rocking a bit. And then the Povetkin fight beforehand, again, a short, stocky fighter who was won every round up until the round AJ knocked him out in. And I mean, he was a 40-year-old man, really a long way past his best. So, yeah, I think people would be wrong to say that AJ was in great form coming into that fight. Yes, he had won all his fights, but since the Klitschko fight against Takam and Povetkin, he really didn't look that great. I mean, even Derek Chisora put a better performance in against Takam than AJ did. So,
but what do you think? Do you think there's a good chance that AJ could get the knockout now? He's looking in better shape. Is it is his promoter putting on the fight in Saudi Arabia. Obviously, it was the same in Europe, but it's more of a seeming to be like a home advantage because Ruiz has to go to Saudi Arabia, whereas before he was in America. So what do you think on that?
Yeah, I mean, both men are away from home. I mean, if you talk about who the advantage is with, is Matchroom are putting on this event, and you've got to say that historically, in terms of judging and things, it's always gone in the favour of the promoter's fighter, which in this case is AJ. We all know how judging can be in boxing, so I would be more nervous if I was in the Ruiz camp if it went to points. I'm sure AJ is looking for the knockout. And I mean, of course, the one big factor was he did drop Ruiz fairly easily in the first fight early on, and Ruiz has never been down before. So it does prove that he can definitely pit Ruiz on the canvas. But of course, it's what happened after that changed the fight completely. I would think that he's this time, and he said himself that he went for the knockout too early, the finish too early on Ruiz in the first fight. And what he needed to do was grind him down more. So I'm sure that will be his plan coming into this, not to get caught by any sort of silly shot. Try and grind him down and take him out in the later rounds. Well, that's all very well, but of course Ruiz is going to fight like he always does, which is to be up close on the inside and putting a lot of pressure on AJ all the time.
Okay, that all being said, we've looked at the betting odds, and where do you see the value, Matt?
Well, look, this is difficult, and it's proven by the fact that it's very tight, a lot of the odds, and with the bookmakers, AJ is the favourite. Whether he should be, I don't know. I mean, both these guys have got just one loss on their record. And of course, AJ did lose to Ruiz, so this is all assuming that it was a luck that Ruiz won, because if it wasn't, really, you would have to say he should be the favourite. I mean, Ruiz is 2-1 to win this fight, whereas AJ is 4-9 on. So there's really not much value in that at all, unless you put in a seriously big bet on, and I'm not sure who would be that confident. The draw is 22-1. Now, we all know that in a lot of these fights, it can be draws. Just look at the Fury Wilder first fight. That suits, of course, everybody, all the businessmen in the game, because it means there's scope for another fight. So it's always one worth sort of backing, or, you know, any of your bets. If you just put a little side bet on the draw, just in case, to cover your other bets, I think it's always worth it. On points, AJ is 4-1. Now, Ruiz is 14-1 on points. Now, I can't believe that, given that Ruiz has won 11 of his fights by decision. I can't understand why people think he has no chance of going all the way on points. Whether, again, it's because people think the way he looks. But you know, he's proven that he can go the distance. It's very deceptive the way he looks. And with 11 wins by decision already in 35 fights, I would say that looks like a very, very good bet to me. I can see this going to points, and I don't think AJ is going to have it all his own way at all with the way that Ruiz is going to try and fight on the inside. So that looks a really great value to me. I mean, the other odds you've got are AJ for the KO, 4-5 on, and Ruiz 3-1.
There is a KO. What round would you put in?
Well, look, AJ, I'm sure, is not going to take any risks after what happened last time. So if AJ is going to go for the KO, I really don't see any earlier than the 7th round. So I definitely in the last part of the fight. So if I was going to go for AJ KO, I would be looking at rounds 8 and 9, something like that. I think he'll wait, hope that Ruiz tires, and go for it at that point when it's less dangerous to start letting his hands go. Ruiz, you know, he's not Mike Tyson. He doesn't jump on people. As I say, a third of his fights have gone to points. So he's not going to take any crazy risks himself, unless this ends up just a brawl. But I don't think that it will. So Ruiz is 3-1 for the knockout. Now, again, I think there's a chance he's done it. He did it in the first fight, so I don't see any reason why he couldn't in the second fight. We know he's got the power to drop AJ. So again, 3-1 on that is just much better odds. So for me, Ruiz by knockout at 3-1, or the big one, Ruiz on points at 14-1, look like where the value's at. I don't know what you think about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the 14-1 looks very good. It's the only thing that stands out as an opportunity. That being said, given it's a Matchroom promotion and he's, that's AJ's promoter, it could always be a little bit dodgy unless he has a very, very convincing fight.
Yeah, I know what you mean, but because of the way Ruiz fights, which is on the inside very busy, it's very hard not to give that fighter points.
But
it's not like he's just putting shots off here and there.
Yeah, but look at the Fury Wilder fight. I mean,
what Wilder did have in that fight was obviously the 2 knockdowns, particularly the one at the end, which was a big one. So you can give 2 of those rounds very clear 10-8 to Wilder, which is always going to help in judging. But so again, if that was the situation here, I think AJ would have to have a couple of big knockdowns.
The benefit of the doubt is likely to go to AJ, even though obviously Ruiz is holding the belt. So, but having said that, 14-1 does look pretty good. So yeah, if you're leaning that way anyway, I think it looks good value.
I mean, look, this fight could go either way, but there's just no value in the odds on AJ.
4-9 for this fight. You got to be very confident.
I mean, look, there will be some people putting money on that, but of course, it will probably be some of those guys that are behind the event in Saudi Arabia who can afford to put $100,000 on it,
Yeah.
But for most of us, there's just not value in that.
No, I don't see it either.
So I would think Ruiz at 3-1 for a KO at any time in the fight, and the 14-1. There's a chance there for guys to make a lot of money.
Yeah.
Those are great odds, and for something that Ruiz has done 11 times before. He's got a track record of winning the fights on decisions.
Yeah.
So
and beyond this fight, what do you think is the best result for boxing and the heavyweight division? Obviously, there's Wilder and Fury waiting in the wings. They're going to be likely to fight each other in February. What would you say overall would add the most to the sport? Because it's for a renaissance in the last 18 months. And this is obviously going to contribute to that in one way or another. Because if AJ loses, a lot of people are saying that could be, I wouldn't say the end, but it could.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's any way back for AJ if he loses this fight. He's not going to get a third shot at this because Andy Ruiz is going to go on to fight either Wilder or Fury next. And the belts could well then move on again. So I think this is make or break for AJ, and I think that's the reason why he's had to take this rematch straight away, which, as we all know, historically in boxing, has not been the right thing to do. Not often at all have people been able to, get revenge on that first fight if they've lost it. But he can't take the risk.
And I think also if Ruiz went off and fought Wilder or Fury, there's a very good chance that he's going to end up losing those belts, and then AJ would have to then fight one of those. So I understand why he's done it. If he'd lost to someone who would have really dominated the division and all the rest, then the belts would have been safe with him. Then it would have made sense maybe to wait a fight. But given Ruiz hasn't historically been a top-level heavyweight, be honest about it, I think he was very much in danger of losing his bouts if he fought Wilder or Fury. So then AJ would have to go to them, and obviously the ball would then be very much in their court, and it wouldn't be the same gravitas of fight as if he was the champion against.
Well, no, there's if AJ loses this, he really slips down the pecking order. Obviously, he's way behind then Wilder, Ruiz, Fury, and even Dillian White is the number one contender for Wilder's belt, so he would probably step ahead of Joshua, and I'm just not sure if Joshua really want to then start going through the motions fighting not such big stage fights. So I really think this is make or break for him. Whereas Andy Ruiz, if he loses, well, he's won one and lost one against AJ, which obviously sets up the third fight perfectly. So yeah, I think there's not much to lose for.
It's leveled up. It's leveled up from as we've discussed previously. Prior to fighting AJ, he was fighting outside on a university campus. So he's gone, progressed light years in his career thanks to the fight and thanks to his victory. So he's at a whole nother level, regardless really of what happens in this fight. Obviously, he's going to want to be free belt world champion, but at the same time, he's still in the conversation with these guys, whereas before he never was even part of the conversation. So
he wasn't, but what we've got to remember is AJ has been fast-tracked to this point, not necessarily on merit. I mean, if you look at amateur record, Andy Ruiz was 105 wins and 5 losses, as compared to Joshua's 48 wins and 3 losses. And then in the pro ranks, Joshua is 21 wins and 1 loss, and Ruiz is 34 wins and 1 loss. So, Ruiz has been around. He's just been under the radar because he hasn't had the chance for the fights, because basically he hasn't had the backing of a big promoter in the same way that AJ has. So it's not necessarily that he wasn't ever as good.
Yeah, but if you've had that many fights, it would have really attracted top by then.
Yeah, I mean, the other way...
It's in the last 18 months, maybe 2 years, but 18 months that the heavyweight divisions really started to take off. Before that, you could argue that AJ had a lot of it his own way because of the state of the division. More of the action, you say, was in the middleweight division.
Well, I mean, I think you have to say that the only
out and all the rest of it.
Fighter that AJ fought is Klitschko, and he fought a very old Klitschko who's coming off a loss to Fury and who had been out the ring for way too long because of all the problems with the Fury rematch. So talk about a perfect time to fight Klitschko. And the truth is that AJ was in a lot of trouble in that fight, and no one really can understand why Klitschko didn't take him out, probably because of what had happened to Klitschko mentally in the fight against Fury. But not taking anything away from AJ. I mean, he won that fight. He showed so much bottle to get off the canvas and win it. But I would say he showed more bottle than actual fighting skill in that fight. And then, as I say, since then, Tarkan, Povetkin, old men, all around 40, he really was behind on points and not doing so well until he found that knockout, which is, doesn't actually look great on paper. And their only mutual opponent, of course, was Joseph Parker, which is the only time that AJ went the distance. Never looked like knocking Parker out. And it's got to be said that when Ruiz fought Parker, he did lose. That's his only loss. But he lost, I think it was on a split decision. And it was a very, debatable one. It was in New Zealand on Parker's home turf. And probably Ruiz should have won that on points the same way that AJ did. So if you look at mutual opponents like that, it's very hard to say that one stands out as being a much better fighter than the other. Which is why I think this is so evenly matched again going into the second fight, and as I think the first fight proved that to be the case.
Okay, well let's wrap this up. What do you see happening?
Well, it's a tough one, and I've got to go with the facts of what we've seen. It's easy to let your sort of heart get in the way of these things and think, well, AJ can do it, and he got unlucky. But I don't think that he did. I think his lack of amateur pedigree has started to catch up with him. He had 51 fights as an amateur, lost 3 of them, as opposed to Ruiz, who had 110 fights. And that's where you learn a lot of things in boxing, and it can catch up with you. And I think this is the point where AJ has stepped up to the very top tier. It's caught up with him. I mean, everyone will remember in the first fight, when he came back to his corner and said, "Why am I feeling like this?" Well,
yeah,
boxers never say that. But AJ, because the truth is, he's never been hurt before. He hasn't had enough fights. He just hasn't experienced it, and he didn't know how to deal with it. He didn't go into autopilot like a lot of the very best fighters.
Like Tyson Fury, when he just jumped up off the couch.
Exactly, yeah, because he's been fighting all his life. He knew how to automatically, his body knew how to react to that. well, nothing's going to have changed between the first fight and the second, this rematch for AJ. So I just think if he gets tagged again, he's going to find himself in the same place. And I think Ruiz is going to have the confidence to step in and go for him, which does not suit AJ, all that pressure on him all the time. I think Ruiz is actually a much more busy fighter. Whether he can take him out or not, I'm not sure. And I actually think this is going to go the distance. I can see both men possibly getting on the canvas during the fight, but I think in the end, it's going to go the distance. And I think Ruiz, with all the work he does through the rounds, is going to take this on the points. And with the bookies 14 to 1.
It's been good enough? I mean, we're watching all these shows on YouTube and different things, Instagram. Obviously, this is a huge thing for him, but do you think he's prepared in the correct way?
Ruiz or Joshua?
Ruiz.
That's hard to say. I mean, obviously, a multi-millionaire overnight, but he has been a boxer all his life. It's proven that, how many fights he had as an amateur and a fair amount of fights as a pro. Even if he doesn't want to do much beyond this fight, I can't see him not taking this fight very seriously. So I just think he's got enough skills in the bag and will be hungry enough. At the end of the day, he doesn't want people remembering him as a one-hit wonder, which is exactly how it will go down if he was to lose this.
Yeah, and he'll be a real hero in Mexico if he wins this rematch as well, because the first Mexican heavyweight champion. I mean, it's a huge deal. Personally, I think it's gonna. I think AJ's gonna come into this differently. There was a lot of uncertainty after last fight, with Baby Miller and all that kind of stuff. So I think I'm going to say Ruiz, unless AJ gets a knockout, and then maybe as you're saying, 7th, 8th round. If he gets a bit scrappy and he gets an opportunity, I think he's going to be in better condition, and I think he can even be hitting a bit harder. I just think that would be his opportunity. Just generally, I think Ruiz can outbox him if it goes the distance. Then, though, if it goes to points, to be honest, I wouldn't necessarily want to call that unless it's very, very clear. So I'd say Ruiz generally. I think the odds are better on him anyway. I wouldn't want to go 4-9 on Joshua unless he comes out and really, as how do I say this, dealt with the loss really well and turned that into a positive, taken it into his training camp, really worked on his areas that he needs to work on to be able to beat Ruiz, then...
I agree. And
I'll say Ruiz. I'm going to say Ruiz, and I think 2-1 is probably fair enough considering he dropped him last time,
Yeah, I think there's some value in that for sure. I mean, there's one thing that's being discussed at all, which is the temperature in Saudi Arabia. I think it's going to be a minimum of sort of 25 degrees. I think that's 77 Fahrenheit. It's pretty warm, certainly compared to in England. And again, that if this fight goes into the sort of later rounds, Andy Ruiz is a lot more used to that sort of weather and the climate he's grown up in than Anthony Joshua is. And Joshua is a big, muscular man, and obviously people that are muscular fatigue a lot faster than someone like Andy Ruiz does. Of course, he looks better, but he certainly fatigue faster. And in that heat, I think that could be another problem for AJ down the line. And as I say, I don't think he's going to be even trying to go for a knockout early on. I just worry for him that he's going to get tired and he's going to get caught out. Yeah, but it's certainly an intriguing fight, and it's going to be a huge one.
Yeah, definitely is, and there's a lot of interest in America as well, and globally, and we've seen a lot of that on Main Event Global itself. So we'd like to thank you, Matt, for your opinions, and
You're welcome.
And hope everyone enjoyed listening to what we thought. We're very much looking forward to the fight, and we'll be doing
tell us in the comments what you think as well. We'd love to hear your opinions.
Definitely. And we'll be doing another episode after the fight to review it and see the outcome. If you like what you hear, subscribe to Main Event Global and turn on the notifications. And we'll be back again shortly.